Oh my God, this is real. I actually didn't think I was gonna be able to move it at all. I thought I had my endgame TV with my 65-inch Sony Bravia QD OLED. When QD OLEDs were first coming out, I was like, damn, these are amazing. But now, and maybe it's because I work with Linus, I really am looking at that 65-inch TV thinking, this thing is puny. I need a large format display, like a frickin' 98-inch, 20,000 dimming zone, 10,000 nit mini LED TV. This TV is hype for a reason. It's $10,000, which is insane, but it's not insane. This is actually gonna take you like more than 1 week for your garbage collection service to get this. You're gonna be out there for half an hour cutting this shit up. Okay, before we get to the actual epic panel over there, let's look at what else is in here. If I can even lift this out. Oh my God. This is a heavy piece of metal. You could like seriously kill some kind of minimalist architect man with this thing. This is crazy. Boom. Try getting a reservation at Dorsia now, you son of a. There's also a bag with a remote that seems like it doesn't have enough metal for $10,000, and some mysterious little grill things that we'll find out about later. Hey, don't look at that. Also comes with a obviously detachable power cable, which I love to see. Damn, this thing better be long. With a TV this big, your outlet can be like 4 feet away and the TV's still in front of it. Oh yeah, this is pretty long, it's nice. I'm gonna say this is 8 feet long. All right, I'll lift and you scoot. Scoot better, scoot faster. Oh, mine didn't have that. 2 pegs, 3 screws, and 1 remaining screw and 1 remaining peg hole that seem to be inaccessible. I don't know what they're for. Maybe we'll find out. No promises. All right, with the second foot on, our first mystery is solved. These things are shrouds for those feet. You know what? Maybe this hole is for running cables down into the hole and out the back, so your cable is running near the feet. That's the only explanation I could think of, because it just otherwise looks unfinished. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Oh God. Ready? Ha! Cuckoo! Oh, look at that sloppy peel. Someone's peeled this before. That was an assault on the senses. I really like the industrial design of this. There are a lot of TVs that are thin these days, especially with OLEDs. But a lot of them only have a thin panel, and then they have some kind of like junk in the trunk bumping out at the bottom, some kind of base. This thing is consistently the same width. It's gotta be maybe even under an inch. How stable does it feel? It's not super stable. I wouldn't let your 5-year-old body check this thing, but you also don't want the feet to be so super wide. So it's probably a good compromise there. The bronze is really nice, so I think it was a good kind of premium look to go with while being acceptable in lots of different spaces. The back has squares kind of reminiscent of what you see on the back of Sony's, and it's got these really nice and stylish enhanced ultra bass drivers back here. You'll never see them, but they look really nice. And then a note about the wall mount, it's actually higher on the TV than a lot of wall mount placements. So if you were to put this on a wall mount that exists in your house already, this TV might sit lower than your current TV. It might look weird. You might have to move your wall mount. The power AC in is over here. The rest of the I/O is way over there. But on the way, you have all these little clippy guys, which appear to be for cable management. So you can just route everything anywhere you want along that, which is really nice. Teleporting over here, we have the I/O, and it's slightly more beefy than a normal TV with 4 HDMI 2.1 ports that are each capable of 4K, 144 Hertz, 120. One of them is the eARC port. Now you also have LAN. We don't know if that's any faster than normal. It's usually 100. And then a USB 2.0 port, another one of those at the bottom, a little boomer nub, and an optical audio out, which is not a boomer port because it's you know, sometimes cool to get a vintage stereo receiver, and sometimes they still use Toslink. I've done it. I'm not a boomer. And there's one more sneaky USB port right here on the side, which is a little more accessible, which I appreciate. It's a damn fine looking TV, but it probably looks better turned on, which we'll do right after this message from our sponsor. Ha! Gotcha.
We here at LMG love tax season. It's basically our Christmas, just with more snow. That's why we want to help you help us with some tax write-offs with some great LTT store deals. Mystery screwdrivers, mystery water bottles, mystery shirts, even things like open box commuter backpacks. There's even gonna be some third-party goodies for you folks to snag as well. Really, we're just digging into the treasure trove that is the forgotten aisles of the warehouse. So grab yourself a water bottle. Shucks, it's giving season. Grab one for your friends too. Save some money on LTT store products by helping us write them off at the links below or at lttstore.com.
Before I begin watching this 75 megabit per second copy of Ari Aster's Midsummer, I do want to take a moment to talk about this remote and how disappointing it is that it's not bronzed to color match the TV. But I will say, to its credit, I love this little wheel. It's amazing. It is so tactile. Earlier I was typing in a keyboard and I was just racing around. It's awesome. All right, how bright is this thing gonna get? As it's easing on, I'm waiting for it to stop and it just keeps going and getting brighter and brighter. Jesus. Look at that sun up there. I'm tempted to crank it up, but one thing to note is that adjusting the brightness of this TV does mess with the color accuracy of the TV, because it affects the gamma tracking. So if you're gonna calibrate this or get dialed in, you kind of wanna set your brightness first and do any color stuff after that. But geez, this looks great. Even just these stills. Okay, here we go. Look at that. Wow. All those little, I feel like I'm looking at like a snow globe or something. These little lights. There's so much contrast in here. It really looks like I'm just looking with my eyes. And that 98 inches sure is immersive. Oh no. No, motion smoothing is on. This is not 24 frames per second. No, stop. And this shot here is actually gonna be useful now that we turn smooth motion off, because as you can see, it's like slightly more jittery now. Now, as someone who runs an OLED at home, this kind of shot can be challenging. Maybe not that one because it has a lot of stuff in the foreground, but a landscape pan on an OLED looks really, really jittery and juddery. So just to say, you know, someone in this price point is probably going to be comparing to an OLED, so it is good to highlight the kind of downsides or shortcomings of OLEDs where they do exist. Nature Cinema, which apparently is 48 hertz, which would double the 24 frames per second that movies are typically shot in, and bring it up to a Gemini Man 48 hertz. That is way smoother. That is way less judder. It doesn't look too icky in this kind of regular movie scene. Maybe 48, maybe that's something to think about. One thing to note though, it says Nature Cinema here, but a lot of people talking about this online call it Natural Cinema, so it's possible we're not in the right mode, or they changed the name, or people are just wrong, or this is a typo, I don't know. Okay, here we are in Infinity War. Holy cow, the Tesseract is blinding. The colors do look off. I think the reds are a little cooked, so I'm gonna see what we can see if we go into a more color accurate mode. Labs did the gamut of testing here, and they found that the HDR filmmaker mode was the most accurate. So let's go there. Man, there are some like just random specular highlights. Like there was a beam of light that just came in, and it's not something I don't think I've ever noticed before when watching this, but it really caught my eye on this TV. This TV does have an ambient light sensor, and a lot of people turn those modes off because they don't want their TV to be dimmer in any circumstance. But with this TV, you probably want to keep it on. I'm sure if you had a fully light controlled room and you made it black, it would actually sear your eyes to have this on, especially if you were watching YouTube and someone pulled up like a white web page, it'd blast you. So this TV truly does have more than 20,000 dimming zones, which are not very large on a TV of this size. They should be about under a centimeter. So let's see if we can get a sense of that by going to YouTube and putting on a local dimming test video. The black levels look really good. In the corners where there are no white elements at all, it's really quite black. There are lights on in here right now. So I'm not gonna go as far as to say they're OLED level inky black, but they look really black. Now as for the lights around the white, I do see some glare around the white. However, there is always going to be some amount of glare, just called veiling glare. It's like an artifact of the way our eyes work, but even that's minimal. Now what I wanna do is go to the side a little bit. I wanna get off axis, because sometimes full array local dimming displays can look really bad off axis, but this is fine. It's not really getting accentuated at all. This test, is exposing some more issues. I can see the trailing edge of this moving block is almost like flickery. It looks like there's a glare around it that is kind of at least 2 widths of the block wide in all directions. But it really seems like the trailing edges seem to glow more than the leading edges. But still, all told, we're talking about, a size less than your fist that's illuminated at all. There was a second there where suddenly it went really black. I think what happened was we switched from that little block going around to this bar, and in that transition there was a moment where there was no white object on the screen, and in that moment the whole screen went really inky black. So this seems like there's some kind of limitation where some banks of lights have to be on to at least some minimum value if there's just any value needed from them. And then when that wasn't the case, they all turned off. And man, if they could do that more often, that'd be great. There are things that you can see in a side-by-side. Like if we had this next to an OLED, we might be able to discern a material difference in how black the blacks are. But you don't have side-by-sides in real life. You have one display in your room. And for all intents and purposes, this is black as tar, man. Like it's really, really black. This is a great experience. All right, boys and girls, we got the brightness set up to 90. Peak brightness, which was set to off, is now on high. Let's see if this blows our socks off. Oh my God, okay, here we go. Whoo. Oh my God, I'm looking in a cauldron. That was an absolute forge. Whoa, oh my God. This is just as bright for me as it is for Gandalf. Wow. Oh, that is so immersive, it's amazing. Now they claim that this display can actually cover 100% of the BT 2020 color space, which is a huge color space, and that would be a huge achievement. Just a couple of years ago, we weren't even talking about the BT 2020 color space. We were always talking about P3. And then displays were covering 73% of it, and that was really great. Then they started covering over 90% of it, and that was insane. Now they're saying, these guys are claiming 100% coverage. Now, we did not measure that. We measured 91% coverage of it, which is still amazing. It's still plenty. I wouldn't be mad. That could still be your end game display. However, we have to point out that we didn't test their claim. Maybe there's a different mode or setup or a different way of testing that can get to 100%, but we can only tell you what we experienced. Speaking of things we measured, out of the box in SDR in vivid mode, we measured up to 9,293 nits in a 5% window and a 1% window at 5,646 nits, which is just insane. In filmmaker mode, it is a lot dimmer, measuring 333 nits in a 1% patch. For color accuracy in filmmaker mode, in SDR, we measured an average delta E of 0.95, which is great. That's color errors the human eye can't discern. But that's the average. The max value was 3, which is a little higher, and someone might be able to notice that a color is off, but it's still very good. Now let's talk about HDR, where there are actually several modes. The brightest one we measured was HDR IMAX mode, where we measured almost 11,000 nits at a 5% patch. There's also HDR Standard, HDR Filmmaker mode, and Dolby Vision. This is a mini LED TV, so it's not gonna have the pixel response times that are just instant like OLEDs have. I guess you could make the argument that it's kind of better for gaming in terms of lifetime of your television set, 'cause it's not gonna have any burn-in issues, at least nowhere near the degree that OLED has, although that, in my experience, hasn't really been a problem. And I think it's getting better with OLEDs all the time. But that's the beauty of these large format TVs. We're getting towards the size of a projector with the picture quality and response times and just all the benefits of TVs. It actually looks really photorealistic right now with how bright some of these highlights are. You actually don't see super dark blacks really anywhere in the scene, and you wouldn't in real life either because there's just enough light, like ambient light being put out by these big billboards and stuff. And they all have different color temperatures as well. Then you got the reflections off the ground. It just looks awesome. If you're someone who's thinking a 98-inch TV, that sounds so stupid, it would be awful to watch, your mind might be changeable. At this viewing distance, I'm sitting about as far from this thing as I sit from my 65-inch TV at home, but there's just something about, especially in the gaming use case, the peripheral edge of the screen is kind of in my peripheral vision, and it just sucks you right into the game. This TV does have 120 watts of speakers in it. There's like 12 speakers and 3 subwoofers, which is kind of crazy, but what would be even crazier is if you actually used any of those. If you spent $10,000 on a TV but didn't have a great speaker setup, that'd be weird, shame on you. But one thing that's cool about this TV is it has Dolby Flex Connect, which is new to me. But apparently you have the capability here to do the processing for surround sound that you would normally do in your AVR, just in the TV itself. So you can plug in a number of speakers or powered speakers that don't need amplification into this TV. The TV will do the processing for the surround sound. That's pretty cool. It's potentially more user-friendly than, AVRs can be intimidating to some folks. But I will say this is kind of an enthusiast TV, so This TV is awesome. I want it. The thing is, it's $10,000 US, which is a lot, like really a lot. You can get the previous model to this thing, which is quite a step down for $3,000 to $5,000. So does that mean that the price of this is gonna come down in a short amount of time? I don't really think so, because it's like kind of their new node, but maybe. But what is clear is that these large format TVs are becoming more and more of a thing. They are the most growthy part of the TV market right now. So I do expect the prices to continue to come down. And I pray to goodness that one of them is in my future for my home. So thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, hit like, hit subscribe, hit us up in the comments to tell us, what do you think of this whole large format TV thing? Is it for you? Is it for billionaires only? Are these gonna come down in price anytime soon so us mere mortals can enjoy it? What do you think?